Welcome back to Ground, a podcast from Cathedral Project. Today's episode is actually pretty heavy. We're going to be talking about grief today. And the guest that I've had on to talk about this is my wife, Natalie. She and I had to walk together through the loss of her mother in July of 2022, so fairly recently. And we've just had a front row seat to the effects of grief, to what it looks like to try to walk through it in health, which is not such an easy thing to do or define a lot of times. But anyway, our hope is that this talk is going to be helpful to anybody out there who's suffering from grief. And grief doesn't necessarily only mean the loss of a loved one, though that is a very acute form of grief that follows that. It could also mean any of the models that we have built up in our mind and become attached to very deeply that get pulled apart by life when things fall apart and we are living in a reality that looks very different from how we had thought or hoped or dreamed that it would. There is grief that accompanies that. And the loss of a loved one, obviously, is probably the most profound loss of a model, because we tend to picture ourselves and our loved ones as like these immortal things. And the truth is, life is fragile, and everything in the universe comes and goes and changes, and that's just the way of it. And it can be brutal sometimes, the reality of that. So we're going to walk through that together today. Hopefully you pick up some tools that can help you along your grief journey, or if you know someone who is going through grief, hopefully this gives you some perspective and some tools you can use to love those people better. Just a couple of quick announcements. The Christian's Guide to Deconstruction is still available on cathedralproject.com under the resources heading in the top navigation for $4.99, $5. And there are going to be some pretty cool guests coming on the podcast very soon. I feel really lucky to be able to interview some of these people, but it's people with some reach in the new emerging faith space, the Christian emerging faith space, and I'm really excited to be able to partner with some of them. Hopefully we can begin to shine a light onto more of a universal understanding of what it means to be a human being and what spirituality can mean for us moving forward, to shift our paradigm into something new that creates a better world from the beliefs that we form or the beliefs that we leave behind, and those will directly inform our behaviors and create a reality around us that is more agreeable for a better future. So I'm excited about that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this interview with Natalie Collier about grief. Again, I hope it is useful and beneficial, helpful for any of you struggling with grief right now, or any of you with friends or loved ones going through grief. So let's get into it.
Are we on?
Yeah, we're on.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, hi.
Hi.
Welcome back.
I love you.
I love you too. Welcome back to the podcast.
I mean, it took me a long time to travel back here, you know.
Back by popular demand. The people have been just
There was a vote.
uproar.
Like
There's been
16
an uproar for
people
you.
were like, bring her back.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Those are about the numbers I'm dealing with right now on my polls.
That's not
About
real, babe.
16 people at a time.
You doing better than that, Jacob. William. Let's pretend.
Yeah. Hey, good job.
No, I'm not calling you William.
No, you did it.
No.
I like it.
It's my baby
You
Jake.
did great. Oh, so today's just a light topic. No big deal. We have a lot going on right now, don't we, babe?
We do.
We have a son in college who we're trying to help sell a truck at the moment.
Yep.
We've got
3 vehicles just
cars just
took a
breaking
turn to
down.
hell,
Yeah.
you know?
At the same time.
The literal hell.
Yeah. Like they all
Burning.
just decided at the same time that they don't like us. Seems like that's how it goes for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're not sentient.
We're getting rid of old energy, Jay.
That's right. That's what I like.
Amen.
That's right.
Amen.
I like that. I like that better. That is some old crusty ass energy
It
on
is.
those cars. Lord have mercy. And why do we drive cars?
It's weird.
We got road systems
God,
and
they're convenient.
entire economic systems and like lifestyles that are 100% dependent on us driving cars.
Is that what the podcast is about today?
Yes, we're going to talk about big oil and about the spill
Yeah.
you guys might not have heard of yet. I have breaking news for you. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're just small talking. So, you're doing well. You got more clients with Bless Her Bones. BlessHerBones.com, everybody. If you want to find a life coach, yeah, who can help you find your true self.
I'm now serving a few Canadian clients as well. Just putting it out there. Okay.
Crossing
about
borders.
the house. Uh-huh.
Literally and metaphorically crossing
Yes.
borders. Yeah. That's what you do. And I'm really proud of you.
And I'm trying to talk soft because the counselor told me that when I'm slow with my breath, that it's more calm and relaxed. So I'm breathy.
And it made me immediately remember your podcast episode where you opened up like, and for all the wives whose husbands are sick. Ooh, ASMR.
Wow.
On the Ground podcast. So how are you feeling during this process of all this change? You're now a life coach. You have a college-age son.
And we have a big secret that we're not revealing right now.
Not yet.
No.
Not yet. No one's coming out of the closet or anything. It's just a major life thing
We are
going
cleaning
on.
out the closets.
We are cleaning out closets.
We are decluttering. That's a little trailer.
So in the midst of all these changes, have there been any feelings that have kind of caught you off guard? I know I've been caught off guard by plenty.
Lots of little pieces of grief have surprised me in the process of decluttering and preparing for big change.
Mm-hmm. We have our youngest, who is just wonderful,
Precious.
going through a bit of a autonomy agency rebellion phase, a little bit of a like clapback phase, I guess you could say.
Yes, and we forget every time. This is our fourth. We forget every time that each child entered this around 11 or 12, where we're like,
she's
who
11.
are you?
Yep, she's 11.
And here we are. And
Yeah.
she is her own person, but she is very similar to her feisty mama.
And she's always been so sweet, and she's still sweet, but now
Precious.
don't hit your mic like that, by the way. Don't do that.
Ooh.
It's bad for the listeners. It's okay. But she, is now like swooping her hair to the side and being like, "What? What did you say?"
And I'm like, "Baby, you were homeschooled. Sit down."
Yeah. So just if you any parents out there listening, we're with you. We feel
We're
you.
with you.
We're with you. And we've been having crazy dreams.
Very crazy dreams.
Yeah, that's been going on. There's been a lot of people around us having crazy dreams too. Mm-hmm. It feels very seminal.
It's an interesting, energetic vibration around this time in our life, around our friends and family and our beliefs. And I love it. I welcome it. But it's surreal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. It's felt like it just descended on us and some friends all at the same time. So that kind of leads me to the main topic that we're talking about today. And it might not seem like such a direct connecting line, but grief. Grief's been a big theme for us over the last year and a half, coming up on 2 years this summer.
I would say it's the last 4 years for me.
Yeah,
because I was grieving for a long time while she was still here.
So anyone who is just joining us or hasn't heard from Natalie's last episode, we're talking about the loss of Nat's mother in July of 2023.
I've already got cry throat. July of 2022.
2022?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I can't get my years straight. Yeah,
you never have been able to.
I never have been able to. It's 2022 because it wouldn't have been July of last year.
You're still a young thing, babe.
Yeah, I don't know what it is with me in time. I think I'm just
like that since you're 17
I'm
years
beyond
old.
time. I'm timeless.
That's the problem.
That's why I can't gauge
You're beyond it.
Yeah.
So you just can't grab it because you're beyond it. Jake used to say something that would piss me off so bad and in a funny way. Like now we joke about it. But he would just be like, I'd be like, God, I'm stressed, or what are we going to do? And he'd be like, time is an illusion.
Yeah,
I was
and I
like,
still
bro,
feel
do
that
not
way, but
say that to me. So
Yeah.
now I say it to him when I am feeling like he's being pissy. I'm like, this just is fine.
Yeah.
Time's an illusion, man.
I still feel that way. I just don't.
I know you do, and I still don't.
Yeah, I just been
And we still love each other.
been taught that that's not the best thing to say.
Not my
at every
favorite thing
juncture.
you've ever said.
Yeah. So the reason that I was talking about a connecting line between dreams and grief is because right after we first lost Nancy, that's Natalie's mom's name, Nancy. And by the way, before I get to that, Nancy suffered from dementia for the last 3 years of her life, maybe a little more actually, in terms of how the symptoms came on to her before they were diagnosed. And just took a really rapid turn downward. And we lost her as a result of that in July of 2022, not 2023. But very soon after we lost her, connecting dreams to this, I had a visceral dream about her where she had like a certain kind of outfit she would always wear. She would always wear like a almost like a sweater trench that had these big buttons. And
We still have it.
yeah, and she would wear like a floral shirt from Talbot's under it.
Always.
All Talbot's. She loved Talbot's. And
3/4 length sleeves.
yeah, 3/4 length sleeve.
Gotta keep
like
it
she was
modest.
going to go play baseball maybe in that floral pattern with a little scoop neck and some probably Talbot's jeans and some little like, you know, mid-height boots and some glasses and her gray hair and a ponytail. And I saw her in a dream right before I woke up standing in our doorway to our bedroom. And she was, she just walked into the bedroom or walked into the doorway, and I was yelling for Natalie in my dream. And Nancy held up her finger over her mouth like to tell me to hush, not to wake Natalie up. And then
you were a little bit tearful, like as you were waking up, like it woke you up.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. And I remember waking up and you being like, what were you dreaming about? Because you were like going, in your dream, like I was making all this noise. And I was like, yeah, that was me yelling in my dream for you because I saw your mom. And it was like her. Like I really saw her very, very presently. And there were some talks we were having around that time about how we're grappling with where a person goes after they die and where are they and what kind of space are they inhabiting. So what kind of thoughts have you had about that now? Is it for anyone out there that's going through grief right now? Maybe they'll feel this with you. What have been your thoughts through the process?
Well, first, I just want to speak to the idea that when you lose somebody, like if someone gets a terminal diagnosis or something like what my mom had, there was tons of preemptive grief and tiny losses along those years. And we both knew it was not headed somewhere well. And I think I was naive in thinking that if I allow myself the freedom to feel and grieve openly throughout her dementia, that I would feel less grief when she died. And I have learned that is not the case.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what your question was.
Well, the question was, not really a question, but more of a just diverting our conversation toward, you know, where does a person go, and how do you get your mind around? Like, what are the things your mind tries to do to wrestle with the reality of a loss like this? Like, what are the depths you've gone to emotionally because of it?
Well, I think that it's stages and it's a ride, and I don't feel like it's linear at all. And I feel like at first it's so surreal and so beyond your regular comprehension that you have these irrational moments. Like I remember her Costco card being such a sorrow for me to think that I wouldn't be on her account anymore. and
she
wondering.
always bought you an account to
Well,
help us with
she
our
always had
groceries.
her account, and
Yeah.
since she wasn't married, she let me be on her account.
Yeah.
And it was this way of her taking care of me.
Yeah.
But I booked in. I will say this: when you walk away from tightly laced religion, and then you lose someone, I think it hits you in a different visceral way. I think it's all profoundly painful, and no pain is greater or less or anything like that. But that there was not a bow on it, that I didn't have beautiful whitewashed illustration in my mind of my mother playing harp romantically to her savior, and she's sitting by my grandmother and standing behind the pearly gates, because all of that was gone for me. And I do believe there is a heaven and a beyond, but I don't understand. It is so beyond my mind that it was very hard to feel like, well, where is she? And I think even if we would still have been in the evangelical church, I would be like, where the hell is she?
Because you still have that strong foundation of belief.
Oh yeah.
You still have I
still love Christ, and
you still have a foundation, and so but the reality of it just feels so much more concrete and
it all feels more of a mystery,
empty. It's you don't have the assurance that you thought you would.
Not at all. And my mom told me I had to tell her,
you're doing great. Hey, by the way, I just want to say this is a very sensitive topic, and Natalie right now is just trying to collect herself. If you're out there and you've been through this, we see you and our hearts are with you, and you need to feel so much freedom to process this gigantic reality of grief in your life, however long it takes and however deep it goes. And the people around you that love you need to give you that space and need to come around you. And we'll touch more on the people around you later. But yeah.
I had to tell my mom. One of her dear friends asked me when she was dying. I called her and I was like, Kathy said, does she know? And I was like, I don't think she knows. She was like, you need to tell her. So we had brought her home to her house out here where we live, and I stayed there with her, and I looked at my mom in her eyes, and I was like, do you know what's happening to you? And she said, what? And I was just like, I was like, you're dying, Mama. And she said, I'm really afraid. And so I think when I lost her, that's been really hard to know that she was afraid, and I selfishly, the little girl in me wishes she would have had like a supernatural comfort, and all of that plays into like where is she now, and is she now at peace and not afraid? And I against all of my Christian upbringing, I called a beautiful 13 Signs of True Astrology woman, young lady in Canada.
Yeah,
and
just in your seeking and you're dealing with the grief and just trying to get some perspective.
And I had her, I talked with her for an hour about my own astrological signs. And at the end, she said, well, we have a few minutes. Do you have any questions? And I just said, hey, I know this is not at all what this is about, but do you feel like you know where my mom is? She knew I lost her, and she got really quiet. This woman knows nothing about me, doesn't follow me on social media or she didn't at that point, and nothing she said, what I'm about to say, could she have contrived from the internet. And she, through very kind of, her cadence of her speech was kind of clunky, and she was like, I'm getting this sense that your mom's like very nearby. And at first I'm like, of course, that's precious to say, but like that feels very universal. And then she says, I feel like your mom is, she's really into like the flowers and plants on your homestead, but not into the animals. And then
Yeah.
she had my attention because my mom did not love the animals,
Nope.
but she really loved the flowers.
Yeah. And you
And-
can't figure that out on Facebook.
Nope.
You can't derive that on
And so
social media.
I was all
Yeah.
ears, and she said, and I'm getting this sense that she's like playing, like loving to play alongside your girls. And I see her resting in this, and she was like trying to find it in her mind's eye. And she said, this bed of flowers, and they're like bright purple, pink. And she was saying it kind of like, what am I saying? And it took my breath away because we planted zinnias that I later named Nana's Magic Magenta because that was her favorite color.
Yeah.
And she said she was resting in this bed of flowers. And I could not believe it. And at the very end, she said, I'm getting this sense that your mom is going to be very nearby, like very nearby for the next 6 or 7 years. And she kind of said it like a question, and it hit me that that is the exact amount of time that my baby girl, like that is when we will have our children grown.
Yeah. She'll be
And-
around 18, be graduating high school, be moving into college around
Yeah.
that time. Exactly.
And
Yeah.
my mom is probably a Enneagram 2, and that was so on brand for my mother. And it was such a treasure to me to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I don't know. I still had so many questions. Like, well, what do you mean? Well, why don't I see her? Why don't I see her? And so I've held that, and I've held it close because I've only had, I think, one dream about her, and I'm desperate for that. But I will say that the wild, I would even dare say wondrous gift of grief is it really does, if you allow it, like my heart has been entirely transformed. Like I can't even express it. It sounds cliche, but even in the depths of the saddest, darkest days where like I cried so hard that I felt sick. Grief is this soul expansive invitation and a new awareness to the beautiful fragility of everything.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful. I'm so grateful for it. Like I actually am so grateful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your relationship with your mom was really very healed.
Yeah, we had fought really hard for that for a very long time.
Yeah. The last at least 15, 20 years of your relationship was really good, but it wasn't always great. So
No.
the reason I bring that up is because I think one thing that's really surprised you a lot is finding how her mother role in your life, while it wasn't great earlier in your life, it became really good in
Yeah.
your adulthood.
It was very traumatic in a lot of my childhood.
Yeah. But it became really great in your adulthood. And when you had kids and started out as a young
was
mom
precious.
and all that, she was just really there for you in such a powerful way. So the loss of the mother figure in your life and how the place in which we find ourselves living where we live and going through what we're going through right now, there's a little bit of an absence. There's a lot
There's
of
a chasm.
lot of loneliness that we deal with. And so that mother role missing from your life, you've really noticed, I think, how much of a gap, how much of a hole is left
And
from
what
her being
an
gone.
untethered feeling it is to have that anchor no longer be on the earth alive.
I think the thing that makes grief so difficult is that it's so bare and honest.
And the webs of it go so far into places you would not expect.
Yeah.
You're like, that's not going to be sad.
We've gotten so used to trying to put this veneer on our lives of like, hey, everything looks good, right? I went on a vacation this year with my vacation days from my job, with my money that I make and my smiles on my face, and all of us are happy and the kids love us and we're all good. And then something like this happens and you are faced with the pummeling reality of having to deal with something negative.
I'm glad you just said that, because I think that, did you have something else you want to say? Okay. I think that what I also noticed was that it is a choice how you deal with it. And it kind of opened my eyes to realize that so many adults that are older than me and even peers don't really deal with it. They push it down, and then it comes out in bodily illness and disease and mental dis-ease. And it made me understand more the complexity of a lot of the relationships around me, and how, this is like the most life-altering thing. Like, to lose someone very close to you, I don't know that there is something more life-altering. I really don't, because I believe that love is the greatest thing, and to lose someone that you love I don't feel like there are even words. And one of my favorite things I heard about grief was that grief is love left unexpressed. And I can testify to that full well. So if you have a lot of love, there is a lot of grief. So people shut their hearts, and people say never again. And the saddest tragedy about that is you also shut your heart to the deeper abundance of joy. You also shut your heart to being like shook and so giddy at just going to a donut shop with your kid on a Saturday morning because you can't believe you're alive together. And you shut your heart to feeling like a childlike wonder at everything, fresh like you were 5 years old again, when you don't allow the pain to also wash through you. So in that way, I feel like pain is this purifying gift if you allow it to ruminate and run its course with like honesty and vulnerability, that you are made new and you're stronger than you think.
Yeah. I think that in that there's also the reality that a positive charge and a negative charge are just realities in energies and poles and magnetization and electricity that happens on the planet. And they're just a force of nature. Calling something negative, we have this sort of emotional response to negativity because we're trying to protect ourselves from loss. So when we hear negative, we think bad. And when we hear positive, we think good. And just like Jackson said in the interview when I had him on last week, you're not really supposed to assign good and bad to the realities of life. That's just in Buddhism, that's not what you're supposed to do. And you can see hints of that in all the world's religions, definitely in Christianity. I think that it's the verse that gets used so often when you lose a loved one is all things work together for the
Fuck
good.
it, man. I
That
can't
sucks.
do that.
That because the
It's
heart,
the worst thing I've ever heard. In that moment.
you can feel the spirit in which that's given, and you can often see the desire to shortcut the reality of the grief.
Because that grief pricks their fear.
Yeah, exactly right. Because they're attaching good to trying to shortcut this thing. Getting through it quicker would be good.
And if they entertain the idea that this mother died, what if their mother died?
Right.
And they don't want to sit with that uncomfort.
Right. And you can tell when someone, it's weird, you can say one thing with one tone of voice and have one look in your eye and it not land right on the person receiving it. But then when someone's really understood the reality and is really like mystically, spiritually, deeply telling you all things work together for the good.
And those people didn't say that.
Right.
Those people said,
I'm so
sorry.
If they were to say it, you would feel the spirit of it. But those are the ones that typically people that really get grief would tell you, would just hold you, hug
Yeah.
you, and sit with you,
Yeah.
and not really say much at all. And that's what's really needed. So I guess that leads us into another section of grief and difficulty, which is the crazy, kind of shocking realization that when you're going through grief, you will have some people show up for you some, but we have been stunned at how little people have really tried to broach the topic again of Natalie's loss.
People forget very quickly.
Yeah.
And I actually haven't taken that personally. It just has made me feel more lonely. Like, I understand. People don't want to dwell on like, oh my God, that's so sad she lost her mom. Like, I understand. I wouldn't want to think about it beforehand. Like, I get it. It just can be very isolating. I wish that we were in more like an area that was better supportive of like grief groups or something. Like, I've been desperate to talk about it. A sweetheart friend of mine, actually his ex-wife, she lost her mom within the same month as I lost my mom.
She's talking about Zach Wheeler,
Yeah.
the guy, you guys probably heard him on the podcast about a few months ago, his wife Mallory, is who she's talking about.
And she just knows. She just knows. You just know. You just have this depth of a connection with someone and with the world, like with the cumulative world of humans that have lost, that is just this waterfall of compassion where it's just like, oh my God, I know what you're carrying. Like, how is it possible that we carry that and we don't die? Like, how do we not die from it? Because it doesn't go away. Your heart can expand around it, or your heart can contract around it and hold everything tight forever. But it can expand, and if it expands, it's still there. Like, the magnitude of the loss is still there, but your love and your heart and your capacity to hold more love has expanded.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that. And I had lost my best friend. I lost my I lost my granddaddy. My dad walked out on us. My brother is a whole story that I won't talk about. And my mom. And so it was and tons of extended family. It's been traumatic for sure.
We just had like a almost comedic level of loss happen in an extremely short period of time.
Within 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Natalie's very best friend. She lost her over differing opinions about COVID and the measures being taken by the government.
And that was when my mom, the first time I took her to the hospital.
And that was exactly when your mom first, was institutionalized for a minute for
in 2020.
A hallucination that she had. That would be a major episode.
Yeah.
Which was the moment that everyone in the family first had to come to grips with the reality of what was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've heard grief defined by Ram Dass, a teacher I like to bring up a lot on this podcast, as our reaction to our models of how we believe life is supposed to go being altered or being smashed or being changed drastically. And I don't want to say that,
I don't love that.
The Buddhist perspective is very helpful. It's very difficult. It's the most difficult to grapple with in this particular thing we're talking about. When we're talking grief, you experience grief when you lose anything that's important to you, but when you lose a loved one, that's where it's the hardest thing to actually grapple with that as a definition, because the attachments that Buddhism talks about, and clinging to things, we're supposed to cling to the people that we love to some extent. That's what love does between us. So, losing your mom, the model of the mother and the model of the way that life was going and the way that you felt that it should go, I think it's at least true in that aspect that the grief comes from that model being gone.
100%.
Yeah. So that definition holds true for me, for sure. I don't know how helpful it is to sit and, reflect on grief as that definition, but what do we do with that? Like when we come out the other side and realize, like, man, my model, the thing I was holding on to is gone. How have you coped and dealt with that being gone, that fierce reality, that just bare truth that things are very different for you now? What are you doing? I've heard you talk about mothering yourself. Explain to us what that looks like, because I know that that's a big part of what you do with your life coaching that you're helping women through.
Yeah.
How does that look for you right now?
That's a great question, babe. And I sound sadder than I am, by the way. I'm just a little tired, and this is a heavy topic, guys, but I swear to God, I'm really fun. Wow, I probably sound real Portland, Oregon.
You know what? You can't be happy all the time.
I sound like Portland, Oregon right now.
Sometimes, like we're just saying, negative doesn't mean bad. Yeah. Positive doesn't mean just good. Yeah. They're just things. You're dealing with a negative charge. Yeah.
I think first I put myself to bed, figuratively and literally, like a good mama. I was like, I am tired in my bones. And so we kind of went into slow mode, and I let my garden overgrow, and I blessed it and just said, fuck it. And I just started doing the next right thing. And if that was crying for 4 hours that day, okay. But I at least tried to be having nourishing meals and getting my bare feet in the grass and taking deep breaths and loving my kids and just little micro habits. It's like I felt this really, it was weird in the midst of the exhaustion and like fog of the grief. I felt this deep mothering protectiveness, like this new nature kind of come out of me of like, I'm all I've got in the mother way. Like, it's me. Like, oh God, I've got to do this. Let me mother myself. And there's plenty of like layered, complex trauma to it. I met with my counselor after maybe the first 6 weeks, and she was like, Natalie, I usually tell clients 3 years. 3 years. You're like 5 weeks out. You should be crying at a butterfly and not able to sip your coffee without crying again. Like, that's normal.
Yeah.
So it was micro habits, and because the universe is a comedian, I had stopped drinking alcohol 2 years previous.
A poet and a comedian, like Jackson and I were talking about.
And so I was sober as a goddamn baby.
Perfect timing.
Felt it all and just did like, what do I know? What would I do for my children? So I'm going to look at my children and myself in the same way. And well, I need a cozy blanket, and they need a cozy blanket, and I need a good book, and I need water and sunshine and slowness. And so that's what we did. And we hit all the firsts. We're still going to be hitting them coming up here, some firsts, but we went through the first holiday season, and it was absolutely heartbreaking. And I tethered myself to what I knew. I made the nostalgic recipes, and I talked honestly. I wrote some things that are so raw. I don't know that they'll ever see the light of day. I asked questions. I looked at myself in the mirror and tried to search for my mother's face. This is kind of wild to piece together in this moment, but she had this little restoration hardware down. It's like a blanket, but it's smaller. And she would just lay it over her lap. She had it forever, like 10 years at least.
It's green on one side and brown on the other.
Yes, not my favorite colors.
Know that sucker.
And it's like a blankie. It's like an adult blankie.
Yep.
And I am obsessed with it now. And I sleep with it almost every night. And I usually grab it, like I hold it. And I'm sure that's just a little girl in me, like wanting to feel some connection.
Yeah.
But before long, I started to just see these little precious things of like, oh, I am not dead. And I've never been more grateful for this homemade biscuit. And I've never been more grateful for this conversation with my child. And I've never felt more present in moments I think I hurried past before that. And I was like, oh my God, maybe this is the gift of grief. And then from that place, you begin to make new little micro habits, new ways to nourish yourself. And you realize how good that feels to nourish yourself and to heal. And I think that's how we move. That's how we heal by feeling.
Yeah, that's been a big part of it. Yeah, mothering yourself through the process. We also recently went to a family counseling appointment, and our family counselor was talking about the importance of allowing the storms of life to hit your children. And you have to, as they grow, allow them to bear up under the weight of those difficulties and come out the other side. The idea of mothering yourself, it's a rebirth. It's a rebirth.
It's a labor and then a rebirth and then a new relationship.
Yeah, and a rebirth is not fun. It's not. It's there's a lot to it. There are parts of it that are fun.
It's bloody.
And there are parts of it that are really not. There are parts of it that are terrifying.
It's very vulnerable.
Yeah. So becoming your own mother figure during this time, I'm sure, has carried with it a great deal of shock and pain and difficulty, but you're doing a great job.
Thanks, babe.
I know that can't be easy. And, for a lot of you out there, I think there's this meme going around about people having to parent themselves. I saw one with Bill Murray walking down the street, and it was talking about the upcoming holiday. And it was like millennials having to parent their children, themselves, and their parents.
Yeah.
Getting themselves psyched up for Thanksgiving dinner. And it's like Bill Murray going, I'm good. I'm great. I feel great. Yep. I feel good.
Yeah.
We're all doing the best we can. If you know someone who's going through a moment like this, who's been through grief, hopefully you're getting more of a perspective right now on what that process is like for them. And hopefully this can give you some tools to turn your attention and compassion toward them and just be there for them.
Yeah, just say, hey, I'm thinking of you today. Like people say, the most classic is like, I don't know what to say. And that's fine.
Yeah.
Just literally say, I woke up and was thinking about you. I love you.
Yeah. Can I bring you some soup?
Yeah.
Here's
a good one. Not can I? I'm bringing you some soup.
Insist.
When can I put it on your porch?
Insist on it.
If you don't want to see anybody, when can I put it on your porch?
Yeah.
I do want to say this because this ties in great, babe. And this is more energy to it.
Shoot, synergy. Let's go.
That had I been in my old theology, I don't think I would have trusted myself to mother myself.
Yeah. I
think that the idea that the heart is so wicked that was drilled into my mind and I can't be trusted, that would, I don't know what that would have looked like, because I think of people that I know, clients that I've had. I've only had one client not continue the whole time, and she hit a block when things started to get vulnerable in her, and she was done. And she had a rough upbringing, and I respect that. If she didn't want to go there, that's okay. But it was a moment for me to realize, man, I trust myself. So when my mom was taken from me, I trusted I could hold myself and love myself well. But if I had that old narrative of but you're wicked, be careful, watch out, your mind, your heart, all these ways, I don't know what that would have looked like. I can't imagine being deeply paranoid on an identity level and then having loss.
Yeah.
Where you're I don't know what I need because I'm not worth it. I'm not worthy. I'm a wretched sinner.
Yeah.
What the hell does a wretched sinner know? And I'm so grateful that while a lot of it was more mysterious and messy and still unanswered for me, that there was a deep, the whole time I think I had a certainty that I don't know how long this is going to take. It does sometimes feel like a physical heartbreak. I remember telling Jake many nights, it was my chest is actually hurting how sad it is. I've never felt that. But to know the whole time I just had this piece of this too belongs. This too belongs. Like, it's going to be okay.
Yeah. It's like an undercurrent. It's that, a couple images that counselor gave us. One was the storm, allowing the storm to hit your kid. And the other one was, he was talking about like compassion fatigue that counselors get, which if you've watched the show Shrinking on Apple TV, if you haven't yet, it's our favorite. You need to watch it. But there's a line where Harrison Ford, his character, looks at Jason Segel's character and goes, "Oh, compassion fatigue," you know.
It was really good.
They really, yeah, I know. I thought it was pretty good.
Harrison?
Yeah, here I am. I'm not nearly as rich as him. Oh, God, I wish. But anyway,
you're so much sexier.
Compassion fatigue, dealing with empathy at a level where you're having to just pour it out on all these clients as a counselor all day, for your entire work week. He said the advice he got from his mentor was to care less, and not to not care, but to stand over himself, like envision himself as on the balcony above the counseling session, coaching himself through the counseling session. So going through what would be the most helpful motion for that client, while not investing so much emotion into it that you're fatigued at the end of the day. So,
I don't know that you can do that if it's yourself as much.
Well, that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out here. That's what I'm trying to work through. What do you see in this with me? Because I look at it as, if I can stand over myself and watch the storm of life hit me, I can feel what I need to feel. But if I'm sort of there's like a Buddhist meditation about puppeteering yourself. If I can look down at myself and watch myself go through the difficulty and encourage myself with like, it's going to be okay. You've got this. You said there's an undercurrent of this too belongs that's been kind of carrying you through the grief that you've been dealing with, that you somehow still had that peace. Mm-hmm. Do you think that maybe that was your higher self in the balcony?
Oh, I definitely.
Encouraging you through those difficulties?
I think it was definitely myself, my true self, my place that God lives self. But I feel like it is at the same time so complex and visceral that you feel it in your body. So it's hard to like detach from your nervous system to look down on it. I think that's a very helpful metaphor. And I think sometimes it was like, this is just a moment. This is a moment. My life is a moment. But overall,
maybe not. I'm sorry, I don't mean to jump in. Maybe not like this incredibly intentional visualization as much as a through the process kind of remembering throughout the process here and there that you are guiding yourself.
Oh, yes.
Leading yourself,
I would look
yourself.
in the mirror and be bawling and say, you are going to be okay. I found myself sometimes in the bathroom, like giving my own self a hug.
Yeah,
and
that's really powerful to do that.
And saying, you're going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And I would just encourage you, if the idea of looking at yourself in the mirror and saying into your own eyes with loving intention, you're going to be okay. If that is unnerving, with all of the love in my heart, I ask you to be curious about why that is. Mm-hmm. And just sit with that. Try to notice that without judgment, what comes up from that.
Yeah.
Because I do think that is a fear point, but I also think that's a invitation to growth and deeper embodiment.
Yeah.
To sit with what that is. And I think that is another thing. Grief just rips that shit to shreds.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, I'm a primal moaning creature right now. What the fuck? I'm hugging myself in the bathroom, like, and it feels like the best right thing to do right now.
Yeah.
And so that is a gift, that it's like all of the niceties and etiquette that you might feel, or the ways that we hide behind our ego in public, and like, oh my God, I'm like so cute and perfect, and no problems, and I don't have pain. That all that shit's gone. And some people hide it better than others. Thank God I have never been able to hide it. I think I would be a lot more unhealthy, and I think I would be a lot further down an autoimmune path. But yeah.
Yeah. I had a thought while you were talking about the ways that we've been conditioned to think of ourselves through if it's a Christian upbringing or a more fundamental religious upbringing. You've probably been taught in some way to think of yourself as, to take humility to its extreme and to think of yourself as something that you should not take seriously. Like, oh, well,
like
I'm
not
just
valid.
Yeah, today I'm over here on this side and tomorrow I'm over there, and I'm just like tossed around by the winds, and who knows what I'm dealing with. I've got a good therapist. Maybe I'll get it figured out one day. Who knows? But I really think that is an impoverished view of self, because I think there's a difference between humility and like
almost like a detached self-deprecation.
Sure, yeah, like really actually thinking too little of yourself,
right? You don't deserve to be feeling big things and grieving. Yeah. And the reason it makes me think also of we're reading this book right now called No Bad Parts. Natalie and I are reading this together, which just a little sidebar. Oh, dang. I'm still working. Baby. But just a little sidebar. Dreams, the power of dreams, Natalie and I brought up at the beginning. We each had a dream one night on the same night in which the book was a shared element of our dream, and I had not started reading the book yet, and Natalie I don't really dream
reading it. Yeah, Natalie doesn't really dream, so that was wild. So there's something to this book. At the very beginning of it, it's kind of giving this model for shifting paradigms, which is something else we're going to be talking about on the podcast coming up. But there was a Thomas Merton quote, and he said, something to the effect of, I'm going to paraphrase because I don't have the book in front of me, but he said something to the effect of, I've had the privilege of seeing human beings in their real truth, like in their truest versions of themselves. And I can say that if we all saw each other this way, through God's eyes, this way, really the only risk there, the only negative to that would be that we would all just be falling down and worshiping each other. So I
believe that.
Yeah, the reality of dealing with a grief like this, again, friends, if you're out there dealing with this, not to humble yourself in a way where you don't take yourself seriously, but to take yourself seriously enough to give yourself the care that you need to deal with what you're going through. And you've sustained an injury.
Yep.
You've sustained an injury, and you need help sometimes getting back up. You need
medicine, you need support, you need rest, you
Not
need
necessarily
tender care.
Big pharma medicine.
No, I mean medicine, sunshine medicine.
Exactly. You need medicine for your soul, yeah.
And if you do need big pharma medicine, there's a time and place for that.
Sure, of course there is.
For sure.
I'm sorry, I was just motioning to my wife. She is just like spinning around like a tulip through the seasons, with her face just looking over here, and the mic is like never pointed directly at her mouth through the whole interview.
Here it is, right here. I was going to say too that the whole time, like in the grief, I have felt held by God. I've definitely had angry times with God, but I've felt held by God. I think that there is a fracture in my perception of God as my close father and God as my close mother. It's almost like I definitely need some IFS therapy here in the next little while, because there's something in me that, like, it's almost like the sadness feels so immense that I can't connect to it right now. I have hope that I will, but right now the father and mother, like mother God, I know that God is father and I know that God is mother, but that is not the way that I feel held by God right now. I do feel held, but it's more ambiguous than that. I would like to address people that have trauma and broken places, not just physical loss, but I think something that I've learned from grief is that, I've grieved a lot of things in my life. I just didn't know that was the name of it. So if you're out there and your parents are still alive, but your childhood maybe was full of pain and hurt, know that the invitation for you to heal, there will be grief in it, because you will have to acknowledge there was a loss. There was a loss as your little girl or your little boy self. There was a loss of moments that you will not have, and that you did not get things that you needed, that you should have gotten. And so I just want to invite you to not be afraid of that, because what is on the other side of you pressing in and looking at your face in the mirror and with love saying, what has happened to me and how can I rebuild? That there is so much goodness and expanse of life meaning on the other side of that pain. I would never say that I'm glad my mom is gone. Never on the earth. I wish I had her here so much longer. But had I known when she first got sick where my heart could go, how large it could grow, I don't think that I would have feared some of the process of the loss as much as I feared it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And I would say that as someone who has felt so often like the reality, like being real about this hard stuff that's going on in life, wasn't welcome in church meetings, like in church, yeah, and like small groups or in staff meetings or whatever. I mean, I remember a pastor's wife at one of our past churches saying, these girls are saying they're just being real, but no, you're just being negative. That's what you're being. And it made everybody laugh because sometimes that's true. But
sometimes it's true for everybody.
Sometimes people are just going through some shit
that makes you uncomfortable because it reminds you of your own shit.
And guess what? If you love them, you're gonna have to extend a hand and allow yourself to feel things that aren't just warm fuzzies for a little while to help that person. And it reminds me of Inside Out, the Pixar movie with all the little emotions that live in this little girl's head. And there's this one emotion that lives in the head called sadness. And they keep putting her off in a corner and telling her, no, you just did it. She's 8, like we're just joy right now. That's all it is. Sadness, what are you talking about? Get out of here. And then there's a moment in the film where sadness sits down. I think it's with the main character's imaginary friend inside her mind. And sadness sits down and grieves the fact that the little girl isn't really playing with the imaginary friend anymore. Yeah. And there's a core memory that gets formed for this little girl that involves sadness. Yeah. And Joy, the kind of other main character, is like losing her mind because she can't believe that a core memory inside their like HQ office of this lady's mind, or this little girl's mind, has had a sadness core memory formed.
But there's joy in it.
But there's what there is growth in it. Yeah. What there is reality.
But joy grows in it.
Yeah, it does.
It's both.
Joy does not mean happiness.
And does not mean the absence of grief and pain.
Joy is a much deeper feeling than happiness, because happiness can tend to be circumstantial and fickle, but joy's rooted. Is very rooted, and that's what I think we are managing to find right now more through this process. And it is possible, and it's there. If you're out there and you are also dealing with this, if you're in the throes of it right now, I just want you to know, like, we have faced this process with real honesty, and for us to be where we are right now, just a testament to facing the reality and dealing with it in rootedness in your higher self and in a spiritual practice. Joy is present and is possible and is on the other side of that for you. And is
robust if you will walk through it with openness.
Yeah.
And I do want to say here that while we were very alone in a lot of our extended family, there were precious friends and people in our Sunday thing gathering that brought us food in the beginning. And
the ground gathering.
Yes.
Georgia. Yeah.
Yes. And like, I want to make sure that my darling people that I love that did show up for me know that I will never, ever be able to repay you. I'm so grateful. And, we live far from most of those people. And so
they still manage to show up.
Yeah. And it's also the longevity of like people move on far, far quicker than obviously the person that has loss. And that's normal. I understand it. I just want people that have not walked through it to be aware that 2 months later, 4 months later, when your life is continuing on as it should, just send a text. Just mention to the person, like, how are you doing with that? What do you need? And that means the world. It almost, in a way, like, I remember feeling grief that I felt like people were forgetting my mom.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't talk about her anymore.
Send a text about Natalie's mom.
Yeah, or say a memory, like, of whoever your friend
today.
is. Yeah, like, tell me a memory, or tell your friend a memory of that person that they lost and something they loved. And it's such a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, thanks, honey. Thanks for being here.
And are we going to turn these off and then go watch our show?
Shrinking?
Oh, maybe.
Man. Yeah, maybe we should.
Yes, and we're going to eat Scandinavian swimmers, or we still no candy February?
No candy February. I'm finally losing weight. I don't care how much grief you're going through, girl. I ain't eating that candy.
I will tell you, I ate probably, swear to God, 75 bags, the large bags of Scandinavian swimmers from Trader Joe's. Yeah. That was my booze, man.
Yeah, peace like a river, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, attendeth your way through Scandinavian swimmers.
Scandinavian swimming.
Well, that's it for today, folks.
That's it.
Thanks for coming along for the ride.
This was heavy. Pour yourself a cozy drink.
It was heavy. There's much happier stuff coming. I've got some other stuff in the plans. And
we're doing something we've never done in our life coming in the next few months.
We'll be announcing that soon.
And we'll take you guys along for that wild adventure.
Yeehaw.
It doesn't really feel like there's much to say after an interview like that. There's no nice, neat button to put on things. I'm the kind of guy that likes to end on a high note. Maybe it's from all of my church worship experiences where there's a hopeful ending. And, the church has not conditioned us to live in lamentation, even though there's a whole book of the Bible named after it. We haven't been conditioned to sit in difficulty and to live with the tension of negative realities. We've become conditioned to an addiction to victory, as you could say, or just this profound discomfort with dealing with realities that we would deem bad or negative. So we're just going to observe a moment of silence right now for anyone experiencing grief, plain and simple. Whether it was the loss of a loved one, the loss of a dream, or whatever model it was you had built up in your mind and had kind of begun to grasp onto and had become attached to that's been taken from you. The grief you're experiencing is a real human emotion that needs time to process, and you need to count yourself worthy of receiving the help and the time that it takes to heal that wound. So let's just take a moment right now to be silent. And remember those in grief, and if we are in grief, to just sit with the grief and with the positive intention that's emanating from the people listening to this right now. So let's observe that right now. May you be comforted, and may you be reminded of your place in the world, that no matter how difficult things get, you still belong here, and you are still loved and seen. May you feel that and know that. If you don't feel that right now and don't feel plugged in, I would encourage you to look at starting one of these ground gatherings we've been talking about. Because these difficulties in isolation are much more difficult to deal with than they are in community, where we're trusting one another with our emotions and with our collective spirituality and understanding. So please do your best to try to get involved in a community. Ground gatherings are available to you. There's a free ebook available at cathedralproject.com in the resources tab in the top navigation. I would encourage you to get involved with that. If you haven't yet already, please subscribe to this podcast. Tell your friends about it. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cathedral Project, and you can also find us on Instagram. My username is William J. Collier, and there's also Cathedral Project at Instagram at DeconstructCP. I hope you guys go in peace and are able to use these tools for a better, more fulfilled and healed life. Until next time.